Good day, everybody. I wish I could say good day, everybody. But today we're going to be talking about events. Nostalgia and furry are kind of like one and the same. They're kind of like apple and pie crust in America. We stem in the history of which we have, and we have a history. We have our own personal histories and our memories of our childhoods, and where we came from. And as we see the times change, we make notes about it. And so I'm going to be referencing two articles that came out for Flare over the past few weeks. The first we're going to talk about is the change in sort of the fandom social dynamic around talking about controversial issues and how it's kind of changed over time to where we are today, and sort of an end of that particular era of how we used to do it. The second topic we're going to talk about is about a blue hedgehog and a major medium that inspired a lot of furry fans back in the day, maybe including the one you're watching right now, has come to a close. So let's go over our topic. I'll go over the less depressing one first, so that way we can end on a sour note, as always. It's always a good way to end off. So let's talk about Vivisector. So for those of you who didn't know what Vivisector is, now of course the site's not dead yet. Of course, like now it was dead when the article was being written. Now it's sort of up with just a blank screen saying Nazi furs heifer off. I guess it's basically it will be back kind of a statement. But the site itself is down. So for those of you who don't know what Vivisector is or what any of that means, in essence, it is what was considered a forum. What's a forum, you ask? Well, I'm glad you asked, young whippersnapper. A forum is like a board in which you post things, and then the things underneath that you get posted. You can find them around somewhere, sometimes these days, in some places. Less and less places these days, because we lost another forum, apparently. But the forum, what was the content of the forum, was sort of what we call furry drama. Now, for those of you who don't know the honor of what furry drama is, it's basically like the social sort of news that is sort of like the controversies within the fandom. Because when you have a bunch of people together, there's going to be controversies, all right? Apparently in furry, we call it drama. Sort of like the conflicts between individuals, bad behaviors committed by individuals, things like that nature. Things that are considered controversial. Now, in essence, like sites like that, stemmied up, they come and they go. The reason that Vivisector sort of fell out of the wayside, apparently to some reports, number one, the site wasn't used as often as often as it used to be. And number two was because there was some sort of drama within Vivisector itself between some of the people who run it. But that is just rumor, speculation. There could be some truth to both. In my mind, I'm not a Vivisector dude, but I, as an individual, had been a part of what they call furry drama group in LiveJournal, back in the LiveJournal days. So, to me, what's happening is that there's a shift in the fandom dynamic. And to me, I think it's actually sort of a good thing. So I'm going to go over why Vivisector and websites such of it probably are dying for a certain reason, and why my theory is that it is. You'll have to forgive me if I'm rambling a bit. It is freaking hot. It is July. So I am pretty warm. So I've got to think fast on my feet. So anyways, the reason that sites like this is that back in the day, when it came to social conflicts within the fandom, Us furries have been on the bad side of conflicts a lot. Like, we've been on the losing side of a lot of conflicts. Nuka Cat has in their the IARP, the International Anthropomorphic Research Project, which I talked about in a previous video, basically talk about the fact that a lot of furries were bullied at some point in their life. Now, being bullied can affect people in different ways, but it does sort of make it so that people are sort of conflict adverse, as it were. They don't want to see people bullying up on each other. They don't want to see conflict within it. So we call it drama, probably because a lot of furries are into the whole acting thing as well. But so back in a lot of our earlier days and in our earlier sort of social networks, is that a lot of this conflict stuff wasn't really talked about as much in the open as it was today, like on a YouTube video, as it were. Like, literally, like, I talked about controversial stuff on this channel. I talked about the RMFC, the Rocky Mountain Fur Con closing. I talked about the Bucks County criminal sort of pedophile ring that occurred down there. Back in the day, talking about this stuff in an open forum such as this would have probably invited you to quite a bit of egg throwing within the fandom. We are having an image issue with the media at the same time, and there's a lot of dark stuff that happens in the world around us that a lot of people weren't comfortable talking about in the open. And that's nothing new in humanity. That stuff probably goes back to the 50s. There's probably a lot of dark stuff that happened back in the day when we had the telephone and stuff like that, where it was harder to get in contact with people, so people could get away with a lot more darkness. And as people adjust and are more connected, that darkness sort of rises to the light, and people get more used to talking about it over time. In essence, that's what's happening with the furry fandom too. Because if I talked about those sex crimes that occurred in Pennsylvania openly back in the time when we were dealing with media that was creating a sort of contentious thing where it's like, we can't be talking about sex crimes in the fandom because the media is going to eat that stuff up like morning's breakfast and go nom 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 and go all crazy. So basically anyone who would talk about stuff like that in an open forum would be kind of panned because they're providing fuel to the enemy, which is the media, which is sort of ironic because in a sad way, that whole like media gotcha stuff, which sort of still is somewhat prevalent today, kind of led us down to the road that we're on in America right now with the president being able to get away with egging the entire media because and it's like we think it's just an isolated thing in the furry fandom where we feel like we've been burned by the media. It's probably even more extended than that. I think anyone out there has seen the media mess up and has experienced how that can affect people. And so I think that unfortunately, because of those mistakes that those individuals had made in the past, it really does paint a sour message of the media to a lot of individuals, even outside the furry fandom, which allows somebody who in power can start to play on that anger of those mistakes. And people in power can do that. But back to the topic at hand. Basically, we've become more comfortable about talking about these things in the open. Back in the day, when things like VV Sector were more prevalent, or other furry drama sites, was you would have an issue where like Fur Affinity was like the main site, and we didn't really have too many other furry social sites at the time. One of the biggest prevalent rules, which still exists today, is called the call-out rule. It's colloquially known as the call-out rule. Basically, your journals and your things cannot be calling out individuals for behavior. you basically can't go, this person sucks because of this, because of the thing that they did it. Like if you had a bad experience with individual, let's say Foxy Guy. So Foxy Guy did something despicable, or they basically took your money and ran, and you want to call them out on it. It's like, I commissioned that Foxy dude to do art for me, and they didn't pay me, and they didn't do it on time. So, instead of dealing it with it in person, you're like, I'm not getting anywhere, so I'm going to post it on Fur Affinity, and I'm going to put up their name and make a stink about it. Fur Affinity could nail you for that. So instead, what people would have to do is they would have to go to LiveJournal, and they would have to join a community, because LiveJournal itself had its own sort of call-out rule thing. Like, don't engage in harassment, don't encourage people to harass other people. So people were very careful on how they talked and what they talked about, and if they were talking about controversial things, they would be usually in locked communities where people would be vetted to join those communities. As I said, I was part of one of those communities, because I thought it was very important that I see both sides of the fandom, both the good and the bad, in somewhat equal fashion, because I think that gives you a more balanced perspective on just the humanity of furry. That being said, back then, of course, there was the whole things like, you should only see good in the fandom, you should only see bad in the fandom, and that sort of continues today. But I think it's gotten better, and I think that's why sort of the shock has worn off. So a lot of these things like Portal of Evil, or which kind of Vivisector stemmed from, or things, or shock things like Something Awful, which I think still exists. The shock sort of wears off, and so people move on, or they just kind of don't see the shock in it anymore. So they just kind of they kind of get used to it. It sort of gets normalized. Dudes in a suit get normalized. That's kind of creepy, right? But it does happen, and so that's all I'm going to say about the Vivisector thing. It might come back, it might not, but I think that it's sort of an end of an era. We have Twitter now, where we can openly call people out, right? We can do the Twitters and this hashtag this person's awful and hashtag this person's awful, for better or for worse. I think a lot of people are still getting used to it, and I think over time people will adapt to what is couth and what's not couth. I think Twitter itself is sort of adapting. It's trying to bring it back a little bit by making accounts restricted for bad behaviors, and sort of that kind of a thing. So basically, and now we have YouTube and as well, which I could talk about anything I want on YouTube. I just choose to be candid. All right, other people can go off the rails and just completely talk about crazy things. People can be Alex Jones up in here going the chemtrails and the blah blah blahs. You can do that, and that person works for the mafia and blah 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 blah. My bad Alex Jones impression. I'd have to bring the mic closer to my face and go, what they don't want you to know is that these things are going terrible. The government's in on it. They're all gonna get you. They're gonna make you into human animal hybrids. All of you are gonna become human animal hybrids. Oh my gosh. I'm a human animal hybrid. I've got to get out of here. All right. That's enough Alex Jones. All right. One of you was waiting for that. I know you were. But anyways, so that's enough for that. So that's basically, I think this is actually kind of long enough for its own video. So I think I'm going to get the hop out of here. What do you think? So what you're going to do is kick that like, hit the subscribe button, kick a comment in the comment section. How do you feel about the sort of changing social dynamic within the fandom and its sort of culture of social engagement? Do you find the new sort of social media-based, Twitter-based, YouTube-based furry fandom a lot more liberating? Or do you find it a lot more intimidating than the older style where we'd have websites that would be more engaged to make sure negative interactions with other people didn't occur as much, and would try to stifle the drama a bit and keep that sort of conversation behind closed doors. I'd like to know what you think about it. I'm pretty sure there's going to be differences of opinion here, but I'm going to get the hop out of here, and I'm going to make a second part of the video talking about the topic I was going to talk about with the Sonic thing. But I've got to keep it shorter because that one took longer to explain than I thought. So thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you again here next time.